Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are Trang and Giselle, and today we will be presenting our analysis of the Waterview case. To begin, let me quickly summarize the story so we'll start with the same understanding. Michael Whelan worked for 4 years as a busy boy. He was then verbally promoted by Rebecca with no written contract, no job description, and no formal communication. On the opening day, he discovered new tasks he had never been told about, such as cutting grass and cleaning toilets. This created frustration within himself, misunderstandings, and tension with the assistant manager, Rebecca Boddington. The conflict eventually escalated to the director of operations, and Rebecca became overwhelmed and demotivated. That caused many interpersonal communication conflicts. Our task today is to explain the root cases, analyze them with communication theories, and propose realistic solutions.
Let's start with a big picture view. The main issues are the reputation of the resort is declining, guest experience inconsistent, the service quality is criticized, and also the frequent ownership changes. It creates unstable corporate control, and also there is a problem about leadership alignment. And the consequences are loss of guest loyalty. It creates negative feedback circulation in the team, the confusion about strategy and values. Employees unsure about leadership direction, and it cannot create a long-term decline. And then moving on to underlying causes. There is lack of strategic communication, no clear corporate identity, ownership transitions, and also weak strategy of human resources policies.
Now, moving one level down, we look at the tactical problems. We can see inconsistent scheduling, undefined payroll policies, weak communication, and no proper training system. Managers do not have the support or clear producers. Finally, at the operational level, we see the real daily impact, conflicts between the staff, misunderstandings about pay, tension between teams, and generally stressful work environment. The consequences are the demotivation of employees, overworked managers, confusion about their roles, and the frequent misunderstandings, as I said. Together, these three levels show that the roots of the problem are structural and communicative and not individual.
Let's start our deep dive into the core concept by analyzing communication flows and emotional intelligence. The communication flows were critically flawed. The major issue was that communication was only verbal. There was no written record or backup for key decisions, which made everything difficult to track and confirm. Compounding this, the high noise level in the office meant that vital messages were constantly misunderstood or misinterpreted. Ultimately, the existing informal structure failed, causing minor disagreements to quickly escalate into full-blown conflict because there was no formal process to catch them early. This lack of structure goes hand in hand with a significant this lack of structure goes hand in hand with a significant gap in emotional intelligence. Simply put, the team had no EI or communication coaching, and it showed Rebecca constantly avoid difficult conversation, allowing problems to fester. This led to Winland reacting emotionally because his expectations were clearly unmet. The unfortunate side effect was the rise of a gossip environment, which dramatically increased tension and distrust across the board.
Moving to slide 5, we look at the management failures, communication styles, and the organizational structure. In terms of managerial communication roles, the supervisor function was unclear. Rebecca was struggling because she lacked the necessary time and direct support from above. As a group, the managers failed to establish fundamental communication routines, leaving the team without dependable channels for updates and feedback. The instability bred toxic communication styles. By this side, the interactions were predominantly defensive or aggressive, with people confusing on winning arguments rather than collaboratively solving problems. We saw two extremes: the aggressive, get out of my way approach clashing with the defensive, I'm not doing this anymore stance. The clear solution here is a shift toward assertive, fact based communication to bring stability back to interactions. Finally, the organizational structure was essentially broken. The formal hierarchy was not respected, there was rampant confusion about authority, and critically, there were no defined reporting lines. This ambiguity meant that nobody truly knew who was accountable for what.
Our final analysis slide 6, we connect the dots between cultural conflicts and the devastating impact on motivation. The prevailing workplace culture created a breeding ground for conflict. We noted cultural communication differences between the Canadian and European teams that were never addressed, leading to friction. More dramatically, there was a profound lack of feedback culture. When you combine that with high pressure and stress, you have to pressurize environment where minor issues are quickly amplified. This brings us to motivation, where the impact of these failures is most visible. The continuous pattern of unkept promises quickly led to mass demotivation. Furthermore, the perception of unfair pay to create a strong feeling of injustice within the team. The ultimate result of broken promises and perceived unfairness is that junior staff lost and all trust in the leadership, which is the most critical issue to address going forward.
Focusing specifically on verbal communication, the characteristics of the dialogue, they were all completely verbal. The dialogue between Welland and Boddington shows defensive behavior. There were no written follow ups. All the attitudes were so emotional, aggressive, and defensive. They used to speak loudly between them, emotionally, and without respect. There were no written proofs, no time reflect, and no clarification of situations, and escalation instead of resolution. As I said before, there was a time where Walla said, "I'm not going to do this anymore," and the manager present said, "Get out of my way, Michael." So, as a recommended alternative, they need an assertive communication describing the facts. They need to express calmly what they need, clarifying all the questions and answers for everyone, so the information is understood, and propose solutions.
Now that we have analyzed the problem, the pivot to the solution, my recommendations focus on modernizing practices to resolve the communication and trust crisis. First, we must modernize communication practices. This means ending the poorly verbal tradition. Every key agreement, especially around pay, roles, and schedules, must have written confirmation. We need to integrate simple digital tools like a shared calendar or a central notes app and implement regular structured check-ins to cut down on misunderstanding before they start. Second, we need training on interpersonal communication and emotion intelligence. This isn't optional, it's essential. We will introduce workshops on active listening, giving constructive feedback, and conflict management. Managers and key staff would receive coaching specially focused on managing temperament and stress in high stakes situations. Third, we must clarify roles and procedures. The organization structure is currently opaque. We need clear job description, defined responsibilities, and transparent process to promotion and career growth. When people know that what is expected of them and what their future looks like, ambiguity disappears. Finally, we have to establish formal conflict resolution protocols. This start with encouraging encouraging early private conversation. If that falls, we use meditation. Most importantly, we must set clear behavioral expectations for all staff, from the front line to the leadership team.
To make these recommendations a reality, we need a phased plan. We'll categorize our actions into short term and long term goals. In the short term, which means immediate action, we will mandate written confirmation for all important changes right away. We will establish a daily or weekly 10-minute brief between the manager and the supervisor to ensure alignment. We must publish all existing job descriptions and most critically, we must facilitate and mediated sessions between Whelan and Boddington to establish the immediate environment. For the long term, we need 3 to 6 months. Our focus will be on embedding change. Month 1 is about the structural fixes and new communication routines. By month 3, we must roll out the emotional intelligence and communication training. In month 4 through 6, we'll introduce recognition programs, set up shared digital tools, and even define key performance indicators for staff morale. We will also introduce mentors and adapt job assignments when necessary to ensure everyone is set up for success.
To conclude, let's reinstate the fundamental issue at Waterview. The crisis we analyzed is, at its heart, a communication crisis. This is not a simple customer service crisis and is not purely a performance crisis. Communication failures occurred at every level, from the strategy decision to the tactical lack of follow through and the operational day-to-day interactions. However, the path forward is clear. By implementing modern communication practices, investing on emotional intelligence training, and establish a clearer organizational structure, the leadership team can rebuild trust, significantly improve teamwork, and ultimately deliver a better guest experience. Thank you so much for listening.